For today's edition of Realist History, we will be covering the Progressive era. Okay, this kind of gonna be an intro to the Progressive era. Okay, which was a time of great change in the United States of America. Uh, while some things stayed the same, uh, particularly race relations, a lot of other things did change during this time period. It's a time period that I think a lot of people today in the Democratic Party want to try to replicate. Whether it be this period, the FDR days, or the LBJ days, they want to replicate the kind of changes that were made during those times. And in particular, with this one, you hear a lot of them call themselves progressives rather than call themselves liberals. You feel me? So we want to dive into this era and see what was really going on and why this time period was so transformative. Okay, so let's get into it. But before we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I am your homeboy first, and this is the realest, most entertaining show in the game. Put it on some. Again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that share button. Put all you people on it, y'all. We're very close to reaching uh, one of our goals, and that's to get to 10,000 subscribers here on YouTube. God bless all the real ones who have already subscribed. If you haven't subscribed yet, I please ask that you go ahead and do so. You know what I'm talking about? That'd be greatly, greatly appreciated. So without further ado, y'all, let's get to this work. Let's get to this work. All right. So today we're going to identify the causes of progressivism and compare it to populism. Okay. Now, if you missed my previous segment of realist history, it was on populism. Okay. Y'all can go to the realist history playlist that's on my channel, okay? And y'all can listen to all of them. You know what I'm saying? Feel free to catch yourself up. You feel me? But go check that out. All right, secondly, we're going to analyze the role that journalists played in the progressive movement. We're going to evaluate some of the social reforms that progressives tackled, and we're going to explain what progressives hope to achieve through political reforms. All right, some of our terms and people that will be focused on in this section. Progressivism, of course, movement that believed honest and efficient government could bring about social justice. Okay, and it's a little deeper than that as well, but I'll go into it. Muckrakers, socially conscious journalists and writers who dramatize the need for reform. Lincoln Stevens was a muckraking author of Shame of the Cities who exposed corruption in urban government. Jacob Riis was a muckraking photographer and author of How the Other Half Lives, and he exposed the condition of the urban poor. The social gospel was a belief that following Christian principles could bring about social justice. Settlement House, community center that provided services for the urban poor. Jane Addams, leader in the Settlement House movement. Direct primary allowed voters to select candidates rather than having them selected by party leaders. Initiative gave citizens the power to propose laws. Referendum allowed citizens to reject or accept laws passed by their legislature. And recall gave voters the power to remove legislators before their term is up. All right. The overarching question of this section is, what areas did progressives think were in need of the greatest reform? Okay. So progressivism was a movement that believed the social challenges caused by industrialization, urbanization, and immigration in the 1890s and 1900s could be addressed. Progressives believed that honest and efficient government could bring about social justice. Okay, so basically what they're getting at is progressives believed that whatever the societal ills were, whatever the problems were in society, that government could solve those problems. Okay, that's a big difference from conservatism. Okay, which we'll get into conservatism real good when I get into the 1920s. Okay, but that's a big difference. All right, they're looking at a problem, they're viewing it through the perspective that government can and should solve this problem, particularly honest and efficient government. All right, so it says progressives were reformers who believed industrialization and urbanization had created social and political problems, were mainly from the emerging middle class, and wanted to reform by using logic and reason. Progressives believed honest and efficient government could bring about social justice. They wanted to end corruption. They tried to make government more responsive to people's needs. They believed that educated leaders should use modern ideas and scientific techniques to improve society. Okay. Think about that term, progressives. You see the word progress in it. Okay. So just from the name, they're about making change. Okay. Uh, um, their views are more in line with the modern times. And as you can see here, they believe that educated leaders should use modern ideas and scientific techniques to improve society. So they won't change and they want the well-educated people among us to kind of lead the way in making those changes. Progressives targeted a variety of issues and problems. Corrupt political machines, we talked about that. Okay, when we in our Gilded Age chapter, you know that again. There's something else from the last chapter. Make sure you go watch those segments. Trusts and monopolies. We talked about how bad monopolies were in the late 1800s. We talked about guys like John D. Rockefeller with Standard Oil. We talked about Andrew Carnegie. Okay, I think that was the first damn chapter we did on industrialization. Make sure you go watch that. Inequities. We talked about how the gap between the rich and the poor was so vast during the late 1800s. Okay, safety issues, issues with city services, women's suffrage. Okay, women. Everything that I've taught y'all so far, women weren't able to vote. On the federal level yet. Okay, we talked about that. We talked about that. And in most states, they weren't able to vote either. Okay. States out west gave women the franchise for state and local elections a little not a little earlier than at the federal level. Some states didn't do it at all until there was a constitutional amendment that gave it to them. Some states like mine, Mississippi, wasn't going for that shit. If it wasn't for a federal amendment to the Constitution, goddamn it, ain't no telling when women would have got the right to vote around here in places like it. You feel me? So progressives targeted all this kind of shit and they thought that government needed to do something about these things. Okay. Muckrakers use investigative reporting to uncover and dramatize societal ills. Okay. Lincoln Stevens wrote The Shame of the Cities. John Spargo wrote The Bitter Cry of the Children. And Ida Tarbell wrote The History of Standard Oil. Okay. First of all, let's handle this word muckrakers. Okay. Muckrakers. Muckrakers, as it says, were these writers who exposed the problems of society in hopes that those problems would be solved. Those were muckrakers. Okay, that's an important distinction to make now because remember, have we gotten to that yet? Yeah, we talked about Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst a little bit, I think. Okay. Maybe we did. I don't know. It's been so long. Y'all know I was dealing with the passing of my mother, and I thank God for y'all who've been down with me. You know what I'm saying? So everything kind of running together on me. At any rate, I don't want y'all to get muckrakers and the yellow press mixed up. The sensationalistic press. I don't want y'all to get them mixed up. See, those motherfuckers, the yellow press, aka the sensationalists, they were just trying to make some money. Okay. They didn't give a fuck about what they were writing. As long as it made some money, they were cool. You know what I'm saying? Just like today with these various accounts on social media who post whatever, say whatever, these YouTube channels that say whatever, do whatever. You know what I'm talking about? Just because they know bullshit sells. That's sensationalistic. Okay. That's not who the muckrakers were. The muckrakers were exposing shit, but in hopes of things getting better. Now, that term muck is just a tricked out word for shit. Okay. And this term muckrakers being applied to writers like Lincoln Stevens and Spargo and Tarbell and others is said to have come from President Theodore Roosevelt, President of the United States from 1901 to 1909, actually a progressive Republican. I know that sounds weird, right? Okay. We'll talk about him more later. But in his opinion, these motherfuckers were stirring up shit. Okay? Think about it. If you were the president, you may not like those who were exposing the problems of America. Cause hell, when they expose the problems, it's almost like you're responsible for the problem. In many people's eyes, how the president be getting blamed for all kind of shit. You know what I'm saying? So I guess maybe these muckrakers took that shit as, you know what, we are stirring shit up. You know what? You're right. We are stirring shit up because we want these problems solved. So we're going to expose them in hopes that things will get better. Okay. Now, to the books themselves, Lincoln Stevens, Shame of the City, it's common sense what that was about, exposing the bullshit that was going on in these cities and shit. All right. The Bitter Cry of the Children was exposing, child labor. Like I know it's a lot of youngins today who wish they didn't have to go to school and that they just go work. Yeah, all right. Shit. Your ass better go read Bitter Cry of the Children. Maybe your ass will think twice. And Ida Tarbell, with the history of Standard Oil, was exposing John D. Rockefeller, the richest motherfucker in U.S. history. You know what I'm saying? Now, I don't know if Elon had caught his ass yet. It's hard to adjust, wealth in across different eras. You know what I'm talking about? But let's just say at that time, that motherfucker was the richest motherfucker in America, richest man in America, John D. Rockefeller. And Ida Tarbell put him on blast with the history of Standard Oil, because how he became the richest man in America wasn't all good. You know what I'm talking about? He was a monopolist. You feel me? So she put him on blast. Let's go. All right, Jacob Riis was another significant muckraker, y'all. He exposed the deplorable conditions poor people were forced to live under and how the other half lives. Okay. And if you can see that right there, you see these children are playing next to a dead horse. And it ain't no big deal for these kids. They chilling. You know what I'm talking about? Like, because they see so much fucked up shit in their lives that this is kind of like, hey, this just what we do. You know what I'm talking about? When I show my students this slide, to make them relate more to it, I related it to Lil Wayne and Lil Wayne's song "Stunned Like My Daddy," where he says, and he's talking about New Orleans, pick them up, fuck them, let them lay. Where I'm from, we see a fucking dead body every day. New Orleans, during his childhood, was listed as one of the murder capitals of America. And so what he's talking about in that record is this is such a common occurrence where I'm from that we're kind of desensitized to it. And that's the same shit that you see here in this picture that Jacob Riis is showing. These kids living in utter poverty in these deplorable conditions, and they're so used to it that shit, it ain't even bothering them. You know what I'm talking about? And so the title, How the Other Half Lives, first of all, it was more than half. More than half. It wasn't like you had half of America fucked up like this, and then the other half of America living like Rockefeller. You know what I'm saying? The income inequality was more vast than that. But what he's trying to do, first of all, it's a catchy title. And at the end of the day, he's trying to expose how the poor were living to the middle class and to the wealthy. You feel me? In hopes that some reforms would be made, some changes would be made for the better. Let's move to Upton Sinclair, y'all. He's another notable muckraker. It says Upton Sinclair's novel, The Jungle, provided a shocking look at meatpacking in Chicago's stockyards. Okay, now, in this book, I should say, Upton Sinclair was trying to expose um, the working conditions in the meatpacking industry. You feel me? But when people read the book, what they focused on was how nasty the shit was. You know what I'm saying? Like that you had the roof leaking and shit, and that shit would be getting mixed in with the meat. How you had rats running through that shit. You know what I'm talking about? And the rats would be getting mixed in with the meat. How injuries were happening and shit on the job. Like motherfucker might lose a finger or some shit, and that shit get mixed in with the meat. You know what I'm talking about? Now, I hope I'm not spoiling anybody's meal. You feel me? Some changes were made. You know, this book led to calls for reform, and reforms eventually were made. You end up getting a law called the Meat Inspection Act. Okay, you end up getting a law called the Pure Food and Drug Act, which created the Food and Drug Administration, aka the FDA. You feel me? So these muckrakers had a hell of a impact on society. You know what I'm talking about? Let's go. Progressive novelists covered a wide range of topics. Theodore Dreiser's Sister Carrie discussed factory conditions for working women. Frances Ellen Watkins, Iola Leroy focused on racial issues. Frank Norris's The Octopus centered on the tensions between farmers and the railroad. So again, y'all, these muckrakers had a sizable impact on society, and it reminds us how media of any kind can make change in this country if you do it right. If you give a fuck enough to find out what's going on and then spread the word about it, it can make an impact on society. It's happened before, okay? And today, it can happen even more easily through social media. Let's go, y'all. All right. Jane Addams led the settlement house movement. Her urban community centers provided social services for immigrants and the poor. Christian reformers, social gospel, demanded a shorter workday and the end of child labor. Now, show y'all a picture of Jane Addams real quick. All right, so that's Jane Addams. Okay, so you think of Jane Addams, just think about the settlement house movement, and uh, just like the term says, settlement house. If you are an immigrant coming from another country, you come to this country, don't speak the language, don't know anybody, or know very few people, you don't know where to get services, you don't know where to work, all that kind of shit. You need help getting settled. Let's say you're somebody moving from the rural environment to the urban environment, something that was going on hell of a lot during this time period, late 1800s, early 1900s. Okay, so you make that leap and you leave Mississippi, you leave Alabama, you leave Louisiana, and you move to New York, Chicago, Boston. You know what I'm talking about? You might need some help getting settled, okay, particularly if you're poor. And so a settlement house could help you. You feel me? Um, and they also help the poor in general, but especially in these situations that I'm talking about, it can be quite beneficial uh, to you. And Jane Addams was one of those who was one of the key figures, if not the key figure in that. Also, a lot of people think about her when they're talking about the social gospel, okay, and how, in their opinion, the teachings of Jesus should motivate Christians to help better society. Okay, so at this time, as it's saying here, one of the things they thought would better society is shortening the workday and ending child labor. I remember we talked about previously that the average workday was anywhere between 12 to 16 hours in a day, doing the Guild today. That shit fucked up, you know. So but they supported, you know, chopping that down some and ending child labor. They felt like children should be in school and not working in your damn factory. All right, let's go. All right, progressives succeeded in reducing child labor and improving school enrollment. The United States Children's Bureau was created in 1912. Now, I'm not sure if y'all gonna be able to see these graphics here, but they're pretty good graphics. And basically, what you can tell is this. In the first graphic I have up here, um, let's see, maybe I'll go solo. Maybe that'll help y'all out. All right. Says children enrolled in public school, 1870 to 1930. What you see is a steady rise. Okay, steady rise. On the other hand, in this other graphic, you see children employed, 1870 to 1930. Now it continued to rise from 1870 to 1900, but then you see a huge decline and a steady decline from 1900 to 1930. Okay, and that's something that progressives were pushing for. They get them kids in school, man. You know what I'm saying? Get them out of that factory and let them focus on their future rather than enriching you big factory owners. Okay. Let's go. In the 1900s, the U.S. had the world's worst rate of industrial accidents. In 1911, 156 workers died in the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. Men and young women jumped to their deaths or burned. Worker safety was an important issue for progressives. Okay, and y'all can find some shit online about this tragedy. Just imagine you in a fucking skyscraper and shit, and that motherfucker catch on fire and that bitch burning, and whoever the fuck was supposed to tell y'all you up on one of these floors, to my on the higher side of this bitch, and the building's on fire, but you just up there doing your job, okay? And nobody has told you that the building's on fire until it's too late. It's too late. Hell of a way to go out, ain't it? Do you choose to burn to death? Or do you risk it and say, shit, maybe I won't break my neck jumping up out this goddamn window? Hell of a decision. But like so many things, we wait until something bad happens to try to make a change instead of being proactive. But this tragedy led to a lot of reforms that we can point to, you know, making sure that we have certain alarms, making sure you got fire extinguishers, making sure you got exits and all that kind of shit, you know. A lot of that can be traced back to this and other tragedies of the time. Let's go. All right, to reform society, progressives realize they must also reform government. Government cannot be controlled by political bosses and business interests. Government needed to be more efficient and more accountable to the people. So remember, y'all, the problem of political corruption that we talked about, the spoil system, they saw a problem. They thought that needed to be reformed. Okay, citizen states experimented with new methods of governing. In Wisconsin, Governor Robert M. LaFollette and other progressives reformed state government to restore political control to the people. Direct primaries, initiatives, referendums, and recalls. Okay. Now, direct primaries, when the people pick the candidates rather than the party bosses picking the candidates. You feel me? That was a big change. Initiatives where the people themselves can propose a law and then vote on a law. You feel me? Referendums where the people, the citizens themselves, not the politicians, the citizens themselves vote on a law that's passed by the politicians. Hey, let's have a referendum on that particular law. I don't know if we the people fuck with that shit that y'all did. Okay, and recalls. Shit, you have a governor in a state or something. You know, governor got 4-year term. Let's say before that 4-year term is up, governor on that bullshit. You might say, hey, let's have a recall election. We can't wait 4 years. Let's get this motherfucker up out of here. All of these changes made government more accountable to the people. Let's go. Progressive governors achieved state-level reforms of the railroads and taxes. 2 progressive governors, Theodore Roosevelt of New York and Woodrow Wilson of New Jersey, would become progressive presidents. Now, one was a Republican, as I mentioned earlier, Theodore Roosevelt, and Woodrow Wilson was a Democrat. I will talk more about them later. On the national level, in 1913, progressives helped pass the 17th Amendment, providing for the direct election of United States senators. And that was a big change, y'all, because before that, the state legislature would vote on and choose who the senators were going to be to go to Washington, D.C. to represent particular states. Okay, so to have the senators be voted on by the people, that's another way of empowering the people. You feel me? Which was one of the themes of the progressive era. Okay, so you kind of see a theme here. Give more power to the people. Make the government more responsive to the people. Reform things, okay? Make changes for the better. And the overarching belief that all these problems that have been mentioned can and should be solved by the government. That's a progressive concept. Okay, we'll contrast that with the conservative ideology when we get there. You feel me? But I want y'all to be thinking about which side you kind of believe in. You know, the more and more I expose all this to you. But let's go back. All right, we knocked out another one, but let's review some of these key terms and people that we covered real quick. All right, so we said progressivism, movement that believed in honest and efficient government. I think that if there's a problem in society, good government should solve that problem. Okay, muckrakers, we said that these were individuals who were accused of stirring up shit, and I think they would say, hey, yeah, we were stirring up shit. We were exposing problems in hopes that those problems get solved. Lincoln Stevens, we said he was a muckraker who was exposing the fucked up shit that was going on in these cities, particularly when it comes to government. Jacob Reese, muckraker, who exposed the deplorable conditions that poor people in these cities were living in. The social gospel was believed that following Christian principles, you know, could lead to social justice. That if you're a real follower of Christ, then you should be allowing the teachings of Christ to motivate you to help people in society. Settlement house, community center that provided services for people who were poor in these cities. Jane Addams, one of the main, if not the main, leader in the settlement house movement. Direct primary, you know, allowing the people to vote on who gonna be the candidates. Initiative, giving the citizens the power to propose a law. Referendum, giving the citizens the power to reject or accept a law. And recall, gave the citizens the power to get a politician up out of there before their term is up. Okay, so knocked out another one, y'all. Okay, we knocked out another one on there. And like I said, I told y'all, make sure you go back and catch up. Okay, we're gonna get rolling here, especially when football season is upon us. You know, it's almost here, you know, to imagine. So when that happens, every single week from the start of football season uh through March, we're gonna be on it. Okay. So I don't want you to fall behind. So you got some catch up time now while I'm, you know, putting out things a little sporadically right now, you know what I'm talking about. But we're gonna roll. Okay. And I want y'all to make sure you own it, because I don't want you to be one of these motherfuckers who are uninformed underinformed or misinformed. We're gonna keep it real here. Okay. On the realest, most entertaining show in the game. Put it on something.